again. Welcome back to our CSS bonanza of tutorials. So in the last video, we set up this button right here where we've got a kind of a switch, right? And previously we made this close button here. What I'd like to do now is, as long as we've got kind of a checkbox, what if we created a radio button? So a radio button allows you to, toggle an element, like you can select this, right? But out of a group of elements, only one of them can be selected, right? So you can see out of my three choices here of Vans, Converse, and Nike, only one of them can be selected at a time, okay? So this is the completed radio button that we're gonna make. But let's go over the code here, and then my challenge to you is to try and do this on your own, and then I'll go through it in the video. But let me walk through the code here. So first of all, we're going to start with a structure like this. And what I have here is I have the same setup that I had with the checkbox. I have an input, but it's type radio, and I've given it a name and an ID, okay? And then I have a label. So really what we're seeing here is just the label, and then the circle and the dot in the middle are the before and after elements, okay? And then the text that we see here is the text that we see right next to the right of the button, okay? We use the for attribute to associate the input with the label. And that way clicking on the label activates this thing. And then we've hidden the original input. So the original input is not visible. The only thing we're seeing is the label. And then to make room for these two elements on the side here, I gave it some padding on the left, right? So there's enough padding on the left for this thing to display, and then the text just sits here to the right of it, okay? The styles that I used were this. I started with a style for the input type radio, and I set display to none. So if I turn this off, you can see that the actual radio button is this dot up here, right? And you can't really style this, right? So that's why we're doing it. If we could style that, then there would be no reason to do what we're doing here, right? And we're kind of limited. It always looks this way. It's always blue. There really isn't a lot you can do with this, right? And then it looks a little different from platform to platform. Like this radio button here will always look the same. So that's like kind of maybe another idea that for doing this, right? So anyway, so we've hidden the radio button, and then I've got radio and then the sibling label. So that's going to give us the style for the basic label. So I gave it padding on the left and a height, and then position relative, because we're going to position the before and after elements with absolute. And then I use display flex and align item center to center the label text vertically here. So, display flex is going to set everybody up in a row, and then align item center is going to move everybody vertically so they're on a center line there. And then I gave it a little bit of margin just to push it away from the things on the outside. Next, to set up the circle here, I used label before. Set the content to nothing, gave it a width and a height, and then I gave it a radius and a 2-pixel solid border. And then I set it to inline block, position absolute, and left of 0. And then that just set it up right here on the left side. And then I gave it a transition too, so when you click here, you can see that it kind of fades in, instead of just like blinking on, right? And then next, I want to create the dot in here. So I use the after, and I set the content. I gave it a width and a height, and a border radius, and a background color. So this background color here is for the not selected circle. So there's a white circle in there. You can't see it, right? Okay. So that's in this state right here. And then I gave it inline block, absolute, and some positioning to move it, right? And then I gave it a transition. Now to handle the checked state, so this center one, Converse right here is checked. Actually, I'm a Vans person. I'm going to click on Vans there, right? So the Vans button is in selected state now. So it's going to, have this checked property. So what I did was I set the color to a different color, and then, and I guess that was it, right? And then I gave this container right here for these guys. Like I gave it a a container um, div, right? So I used class choice container, and then I just made this display flex and then put it in a column. So that just lined these up all vertically, right? So anyway, so why don't you give this a try on your own, and then in the next video, I'll go over it, right? And go over my solution, right? And you can, your solution might be different, and you can style these differently too, whatever works for you. But try it on your own first and see how much you can remember from the previous examples that we did. And again, thanks for watching.